Food prices have gone up 20% in the last 3 years. And the way that you answered that question made me feel as though you were telling Canadians all this other stuff around the world is happening, and it's happening in other places as well. Does that mean that your government doesn't bear any responsibility for the situation here in Canada?
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Liberal House Leader Steve Mackinnon spoke to Vassi Kapelos today after the House rose early for the summer. Based on his performance last time, I don't think it's going to go well for him.
Let's take a look.
You can kind of hear there that things ended very much the way they started, with a focus on the economy and more specifically the cost of living. On that note, I want to bring in the government's House Leader, Steve Mackinnon, to talk about just that. Minister, good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Hi, Vassi.
When we spoke at the beginning of January, when the sitting was just getting started, you insisted your government, I remember the words you used, was laser-like focused on improving the lives of Canadians and specifically on making their life more affordable. The 3 public opinion polls that came out this week very specifically show that few Canadians feel your government has actually done that. Why do you think you failed to convince them?
Okay, I guess we're starting early, Vash.
She wastes no time.
Yeah, I remember when he said that. I think our video actually reflected that he said that they had this laser-like focus to make life more affordable. You know, they just noticed after 9 years that they need to make life more affordable for Canadians. They didn't notice that they doubled housing costs. They didn't notice they doubled rent. They didn't notice that 2 million Canadians were visiting food banks. But now that they did notice, maybe it's time to finally do something.
What they also didn't notice was that CTV put out a report yesterday that said 25% of Canadians are living in poverty. That's 1 in 4.
And that's what we showed on our video last night, or depending on when you watched it, maybe today. But that's deplorable.
It is. It really is. I mean, under Stephen Harper, I think when the Conservatives left office, it was about 14.5%, which is still way, way too high. But the Liberals have almost doubled that number.
Well, and the great thing is based on those polls, it looks like Canadians are finally taking notice, and they're not buying what the Liberals are selling.
Well, we have, look, we showed up to work every day delivering results for Canadians, Vassi, and we passed 15 bills in 14 weeks, which is a good clip for any government, let alone a minority government. But people don't relate to bills, they relate to concrete measures. Those measures include a brand new dental care program, a brand new pharmacare program, supports for housing, school nutrition programs. These are things that are going to help Canadians every day. They're rolling out as we speak. And I know as Canadians gather over the summer, they're going to start, doing the tally of these concrete measures. Also, some blue skies for the economy. We know that there are a lot of miles to go yet, but, inflation coming down, interest rates, first time cut. We've had, a soft landing. Recessions were predicted. This government has helped navigate Canada into a soft landing. So look, there's real supports helping Canadians every day, now enshrined in law. There are some encouraging signs on the economic front. We're just going to keep showing up every day and working.
You can tell that Vassi is just ready to pounce.
Does he think that 25% of the population in poverty is a soft landing?
Well, he evidently thinks it's a blue sky. Blue sky. But,
what?
I don't think he understands even what he's saying. He's saying, well, there's blue skies for the economy, but there's still a long way to go. Well, then it's not blue sky, is it? And never mind the fact that this guy's saying, oh, well, interest rates are coming down. Interest rates came down once at a quarter clip, and nobody is predicting that they're going to be coming down more anytime soon. That's not a soft landing.
I honestly think that they lowered the interest rates just a little so that they could say to Canadians, oh, look, interest rates are coming down. It's not as bad as it was.
The other blatant lie that he said is that the school food program and the pharmacare program are rolling out as we speak.
Well, I mean, technically it's correct because both those bills aren't about the actual program. It's not about implementing the actual program. It's about setting up a framework for implementing those programs.
Right. But so actually saying that the program is rolling out is a blatant lie, because all they're rolling out is, let's set up some new government agencies, employ more public servants than we had before, and they're just going to spend money talking to figure out, A, what drugs you're allowed and not allowed to be covered under the federal drug program, and 2, what your kids are going to be eating in the schools, and how they're going to try and make the provinces pay for it. That's what he's been talking about.
Do you think those blue skies are truly being felt by Canadians? I take your point on some of the examples you put forward, for example, around dental care and pharmacare. But when you look at the overall performance of our economy on a per capita basis, new population data today, for example, shows that average incomes are down 2.45% between the first quarter of 2023 and 2024. The level of per capita GDP in the latest quarter measured by Statistics Canada is the same as it was, Minister, in 2017. What responsibility does your government bear for that? And how will you improve the situation for Canadians? Because they simply don't believe at this point that you will.
And there's no reason to believe it.
No, I mean, the Liberals want us to think that they're solving all these problems, but really they're the ones creating them. And if they happen to fix a problem that they've caused, well, then they try to sing praises about it. But really they're not. They're gaslighting us all into thinking that they have created some utopia, some wonderful, amazing Canada where everybody's being lifted out of poverty. And that's just not true.
Yeah, it's like they set the house on fire and then managed to put the house out with a garden hose, and they want to be lauded as heroes for it.
Well, it's not that they put the house out with the garden hose. It's that they put the smoldering ash out with the garden hose.
Yeah, that's more true. That's more like it. There's no house even left to even put out, and then they're just the coals that are in the ground and they're just smoking. They're putting them out and they're saying, "Oh, look what we did."
And we joke about this stuff, but this really is no joking matter. 25% of Canadians are in poverty now, thanks to the Liberals.
And if you want to go by their lowest statistic, that means they have quadrupled that in 4 years. 4 years. That's not a record you should be proud of, guys.
Well, in your first question, Vassi, we know that there are a lot of challenges. The pandemic, wars in Europe and the Middle East. There have been a lot of shocks to the system around the world, and I know governments around the world are feeling it, but more importantly, people at home are feeling those challenges, affordability challenges and concerns about all sorts of things. It's up to governments to work very hard to address those challenges. With respect to population data, migration is something that we are going to have to cope with. If you're following the British election, it's something they're coping with. If you're following the US election, the French election, migration from other countries is going to be something that countries, especially more prosperous, industrialized countries, deal with. And of course, as these people first enter Canada or the UK or the United States, they don't immediately accede to economic contributions, but we see with labor shortages and so on that this turnaround is happening quickly, and they rapidly become very productive citizens. So there are migratory shocks. We understand those. And obviously working hard to deal with them and to cope with them. But I would point out in concluding on this answer with one thing. Wage gains for about the last year and a half have outpaced inflation. Now we know inflation is a factor. Food inflation is coming down.
I'm glad I can pause him and interrupt him. Vassi's like, what?
Is this guy for serious?
Yeah, for realsies. He's for realsies. This is ridiculous. So he's saying, oh, well, there's certain external factors that are shock to the system. So remember when there's any problems, it's everybody else's fault. It's not the Liberals' fault. They only take credit when something works and comes down. So they're blaming the initial inflation on the world economy, but it wasn't the world economy that brought down inflation. It was the genius economic overspending of Chrystia Freeland that brought it down, not the pressure on the government of from the government of Canada on the Bank of Canada to bring down interest rates. And then this migrant, like, what?
Oh, well, migration is something all countries are dealing with and they have to deal with. No, it's your responsibility as a government to control the borders. And you should not be allowing more people into the country than this country can support, because it's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the Canadians that are already here. It's not fair to the people coming into the country who would like to be Canadians. It's not fair to anybody.
And if you're going to allow migrants in, then you need to adjust your immigration policy. Now, you address your immigration policy so you're not letting in immigrants and you're only letting in migrants. Well, guess what's going to happen? Your immigrants are going to turn into migrants. So, like, you can't keep this up. Oh, well, migrant shocks is hello. What about the immigration shock? Because your government is letting in 1 million people a year.
Well, and then they're saying, oh, we know that these people do not contribute to the economy at first, but, eventually they do. What kind of... I don't even know. You can't call it an excuse, but what kind of logic is that?
That's the problem. I don't even think it's logic. It's just a talking point to get through this interview. And Vassi is just like, Minister, what are you smoking?
Oh, I hope she rips him a new one. Let's watch.
It sounds like it.
Even faster than inflation. But wages, and specifically wages for women, are increasing faster and have been for some time now than the rate of inflation. And as a result, I think that's an encouraging sign for Canadians. Are they feeling it yet? I don't know. I think not entirely.
I don't think they are,
I think
Minister.
we have a lot of work to do.
No, Minister, yeah, with respect, look, the food prices have gone up 20% in the last 3 years. And the way that you answered that question made me feel as though you were telling Canadians all this other stuff around the world is happening, and it's happening in other places as well, which is not untrue. But does that mean that your government doesn't bear any responsibility for the situation here in Canada? When you reference migratory shocks, for example, it is your government that sets the migration policy to this country. It is your government that has allowed temporary migration to get where it is, and then all of a sudden you had to bring in all these new policy measures this year to finally cap it. Your government does bear some responsibility.
Yeah.
I would say they bear the brunt of the responsibility.
Well, here's the thing. They've been in power for almost a decade. And he's probably still going to try and blame the Conservatives.
Oh, most likely.
Like, oh, well, those bad Harper people, almost 10 years ago. Come on, guy. Like, you said yourself, initially you said yourself, well, we show up to work every day. Well, do something then, instead of sitting around and blaming Harper for all of the problems that you have. Like, you don't get to do that. And for the record, if the Conservatives are in for more than a decade and they continue to blame Trudeau for everything that has gone on, we'll be calling them out as well.
Well, to be fair, the Trudeau government has screwed up our debt position so badly that it's going to be an issue for the next several generations.
100%. But if the Conservatives are blaming policies on Trudeau after 10 years, sorry, you could have changed those policies. That won't fly. Just as it's not flying that all the Liberals are saying, well, the Conservatives didn't do this. The Conservatives didn't focus on housing. You didn't focus on housing until like this past fall.
Yeah. Housing is not a primary federal responsibility.
Yeah. Like, interest rates are at historic lows, Glenn.
That's taking a little bit of a shortcut. We have international treaties, as do all of our allies and all countries, with respect to asylum seekers. That is, of course, one of the major shocks
I'm not
we're
referencing
experiencing.
asylum seeker. It's mostly temporary migration through foreign students.
There indeed, we have, as you and I have discussed, curtailed the number of temporary residents in Canada, specifically students. We've imposed visa requirements on Mexico, for instance. We are taking action on a number of fronts, but we do continue to have labor shortages. There are hospitals near my riding that could not operate without immigrants helping to run those hospitals, the entire care economy, many of the corners of our agricultural sector, our food sector, require temporary foreign workers. So it is a very difficult mix. We're taking action to curtail a lot of it, but indeed there are migration flows, but there are also immigration requirements. Canada has needs. We want people here contributing to the economy, working hard, paying the bills, and contributing in all ways to our economy, putting food on the table, but also being very productive citizens.
He said the quiet part out loud. Did you catch it?
No, I didn't.
He said, we need these immigrants here to pay the bills.
Yes, that's why our immigration is going through the roof, because they need taxpayers to pay for Chrystia Freeland's outlandish spending.
And that's why they want them, folks. They don't care about what they do. They just care that they pay for these ridiculous policies that Canadians cannot afford.
Well, and I find it interesting that they're funding birth control because our population is not at replacement levels.
Right. The population of North America would be in a steady decline without immigration.
Well, and that's the whole reason they're encouraging immigration instead of for Canadians who are currently here to have bigger families. It's because if Canadians who are here already have bigger families, it's going to take 18 years for those babies to grow up and become productive taxpayers. If they bring in people from other countries, well, they're already over 18 and they can already work.
And certainly, Minister, I don't think questioning the level of immigration means that someone is saying immigration is bad or is not a part of the fabric of this country. So let me delineate very clearly. I was not speaking about a permanent immigration, the 500,000 immigrants that this country has seen come in over the last year. I'm speaking specifically of temporary migration. Statistics Canada also released new data on that today, saying that temporary residents now make up 6.8% of the population, up from 3.5% 2 years ago. I think it's fair to say if your government had introduced the policies you recently did earlier or had taken a closer look at those patterns, we might not be facing the housing crisis we are today.
She's absolutely right.
Yeah, 100%. Like when your temporary foreign worker population doubles, and not just going from like one person to two people or 100 people to 200 people, 6% of the population, that's a lot.
Oh, that's huge.
Like that's a lot. What, 1% is what, 400,000 people?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Something like that. So you've gone from 400,000 people to 800,000 people. That's a lot of people you have to house. It's a lot of people that need medical care, to buy groceries. Like, that's not an insignificant amount of people. And like, Vassi is asking questions that these people should be asked the first day they show up to work. So you're going to look at the data and then, put a plan around the data so you can forecast what the potential trends are with these temporary foreign workers so you can get ahead of that and make policies so you can control that. Oh, that would be a good idea. Maybe we'll wait till year 9 to do that.
No, what the Liberals have done their entire tenure as government is they've waited until it's become a problem, and so much of a problem that Canadians can no longer just ignore it anymore, and then they do something about it. And they don't even do something constructive. They do the bare minimum that they can get away with and see what happens.
And then when in doubt, blame the Conservatives.
Always.
Well, in the meantime, Vassi, we had a COVID shock. We had some severe constraints with respect to our labor force. We had, as we well know, in care homes.
Okay, I'm sorry. You had some severe constraints related to your labor force. You mean when you trialed out universal basic income and then a whole bunch of Canadians said, you mean I could get paid more to stay home than go to work? That sounds like a great deal for me.
Well, and they're saying that it was in regards to care homes specifically, is what Mackinnon was saying. Now, I know from friends that the average PSW only makes like maybe $1 or $2 more than minimum wage, at least around here. So why would you want to go to school for, I think it's a year program, just to make barely above minimum wage, which is still far below what the average Canadian needs to survive in this country now, thanks to the Liberals. And it's a very difficult job. People are abusive towards you. It's physically demanding. The hours are garbage. why would Canadians want to do that job? Now, many do, and we commend them for it because it is a very, very difficult job. But you don't get people going into that line of work because it is so difficult, and the monetary reward just is not there.
Well, and here's the other thing. When they were handing out CERB, we know some small business owners, near where we live. They couldn't get high school students. They couldn't get young adults. They couldn't get anybody because it didn't make sense. Take CERB, stay home. Done.
Yeah, why would you go to work 40 hours a week to bring home the exact same paycheck that you could get from sitting around doing nothing and collecting CERB?
And that's the question. And that's why universal basic income will never work.
It's a bad idea.
And in other sectors of the economy, there were times, I will remind you, that grain harvests, asparagus harvests in Quebec, fish plants were not able to operate during the COVID pandemic, and we had to take action on that front as well. But indeed, temporary immigration is just that, is temporary. The government's acting to curtail it as surgically as possible to keep those who are required to stay and contribute to the economy, but trim some of the excess, like students, make some additional and more stringent visa requirements a reality. But all of this, Vassi, of course, is something that we need to discuss in the context of an economy that is not growing yet quickly enough, but has avoided a recession after that intense shock of COVID, after supply shocks of wars elsewhere in the world, of supply shocks of tariffs and so on with China, and trade wars going on all around the world. The world is in a level of upheaval, and Canada has coped with it very well. Canada and Canadians are feeling the after effects of this. We know that. We talk to them every day. That's why we're putting in place some of the things I mentioned off of the top of this interview. But Canada, as a general rule, has come through this as well as any country, certainly in the G7 can, and retains the best fiscal situation in the G7. It's important that we point this out, all the while recognizing that there's a lot of work yet to do, a lot of kilometers and miles to go.
I just have 30 seconds left, Minister, and I would counter the points that are very fair that you just put out by saying that, according to the OECD, Canada also has had the slowest GDP per capita growth in the G7 since 2015. If, in fact, the disconnect still exists between the larger macroeconomic picture you're painting and the feeling of Canadians that life is unbearably unaffordable when the House comes back in September, are you prepared to put more on the table to address that?
Well, we're not going to preview the fall yet, but I will absolutely say that we will continue to be focused on affordability and continue to be focused on putting in place things that help Canadians every day. And the dental care program will continue to roll out. The pharmacare program will continue to be developed. We'll be working with provinces on things like school nutrition. These are things, childcare, couples that are watching us. There are couples in this country, Vassi, that are saving hundreds, even thousands of dollars a month on childcare as a direct result of the agreements that we've put in place with provinces to roll out $10 a day childcare right across the country. And so, these things we know will have an impact. We know also it takes some time to digest some of these big changes, but we're very proud of the work that we've done. And we know when Canadians turn to tallying up and assessing the various positions of the parties, Pierre Poilievre wants to cut all of that. He wants to take it all away. He's not telling you that. He talks in these slogans. But this government is not only telling you what it's going to do, but acting on it, and the proof is in the pudding.
Oh man, I wish Vassi got the last word, because that was just pure garbage coming out of Mackinnon's mouth.
The whole thing was garbage. It was just like one big landfill. Like, he just opened his mouth and 400 cubic meters of garbage just poured out. This guy, and he knows that Vassi wants to rebuttal, and he's just like, okay, keep talking until the interview's over and I can get off camera so she doesn't rip me apart.
Yeah, if I keep talking, she can't interrupt me, and then she can't correct me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and I love how at the end there he was saying, well, Pierre's going to cut all these things. He's not saying he is, but he went, okay, so...
So Steve McKinnon can read minds or predict the future now?
Yeah,
I
apparently.
guess.
What he is going to do is cut all of the garbage that you put in. And I'm sorry, you keep talking up this childcare thing. There are so many childcare businesses that went under, and so many parents that I know that they can't get this $10 a day childcare crap. They can't get it. So and now you're talking about the dental plan. Well, that's primarily for seniors.
Well, it is for now. I think I don't actually recall if it's this summer or if it's next summer that they are going to include anyone who doesn't have dental. But you're right. It's for seniors right now.
Yeah, like this government is just burying Canada in debt just to buy votes. And this is the problem that you see with Liberal governments. No, notice what Stephen Harper, he ran on in his election. He wasn't trying to buy votes. He was trying to show people common sense and say, see, we balance the budget. What the Liberals do is they just open the vault and spend to Canada's detriment, and they don't care. Because guess what they'll do? They'll just open the floodgates, bring in more immigrants in, so they can pay the bills.
Well, and also all these Liberals are filthy rich, so what do they care? It doesn't affect them. It doesn't touch them.
Yeah, because, it turns out they are actually getting rich off of all of the funding they're giving to companies that they actually have a stake in. But, screw the average Canadian, right? But that's okay, folks. We are getting one day closer to an election every day that passes. And Canada's woken up. The Liberals can't stop it. They cannot stop it. With this budget, it was a last hurrah to try and get any votes whatsoever. And Trudeau was supposed to get a 5 points upswing. Well, the latest Abacus poll shows them down at around 21. 20 points away from the Conservatives.
And lower than ever, if I'm not mistaken.
So looks like that didn't work out too well for them, did it? So it'll be interesting. Is Trudeau going to take a walk on the beach or walk in the snow? I guess we'll find out, because there's only, 11 days left in June. Clock's ticking, Trudeau.